Yep.
All right, it's 7 o'clock, so we'll call this regular meeting of the Garfield Township Planning Commission to order. First order of business is we typically recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And are you going to take a roll call, please?
Sure am. McManus.
Here.
Augustinelli.
Here.
Klein.
Here.
Robertson.
Here.
Fudge.
Here.
Racine.
Here.
Noted that be good as absent and excused.
The first order on the agenda is public comment. We actually have a couple of public comment portions, one at the beginning of the meeting, one at the end. And we do have one public hearing scheduled for the evening on the letter or rezoning a parcel on Eastward Drive. So if anybody has anything they want to tell us, feel free to state your name, come up to the podium, please, and tell us what you'd like to tell us, and we'll be happy to listen. And like usual, people aren't all rushing to the podium to do that, so I guess we'll close this first public comment portion. Next item is a review of the agenda, and we need to approve it if we want to. And if anybody's got any conflict of interest, we need to hear about that. Bob?
Mr. Chairman, I've got to stand down from item 7B, the beta stuff.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Anybody have any suggestions on the agenda?
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda.
Support.
Any further discussion on that? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Next up is a review of the minutes from our meeting on November 8th. Are there any suggested modifications to those?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Support.
Any further discussion on that? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. John, any correspondence that we need to be made aware of?
We do not.
Okay, then we'll move on to reports. Molly, anything from the town board you want to report about this evening?
Well, happy to say we have approved the reappointment of Racine and Robertson from the board, so congratulations, we're happy to have you, and
Thank you.
Thank you, I
great.
think.
Thank you, I think. And then the other thing is the township is looking at some new projects in terms of bike paths and actually trails, working with TART, working with Safe Routes to Schools. And a big one is Airport Road and Barlow and connecting into the city there. So we're working on that.
That would be nice. Great.
That's it.
Thanks, Molly. I don't see Chris here tonight. Does anybody else have any news on the Parks and Recreation Commission?
I can do a brief
Steve, okay.
mention of that. We did have a meeting last week, our last meeting of the year. One of the items that was on it was discussion of the Buffalo Ridge Trail extension. There was a group of neighbors kind of just to the next logical place where it might go. And it's been a project that was discussed in the past or kind of vision. There just aren't a lot of like exact details right now. And as Molly said, we've got some other projects lined up for either 2024 or that are on the front burner. So possibly next year at least get some details, kind of do some fact finding and scope out a project for future years. But we've had a little discussion on that.
Great.
And otherwise just kind of took care of some year-end business.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Joe, no news from the Joint Planning Commission?
ZBA first or not?
I guess we could do ZBA first, Bob.
We had no meeting. Our last meeting of the year is next week.
Okay.
Sorry about that. We'll have our January meeting, but no, we haven't had one since, so our joint meeting quarterly will be in January, so.
Great, thanks. John, any staff report?
You have our monthly report for December 2023 is provided in your packet. It was also provided to the Township Board at their meeting yesterday evening. We just wanted to continue to make the announcement of we're going through a master plan update process here at Garfield Township. So there is our website, which has access, including the current draft of the master plan. It's still a draft and is still under discussion and review by the Planning Commission at this point. So, but we did want to make it available to residents and the broader public. There's also, we did notice it out in the most recent newsletter that went to township residents, and we've been
Saw
getting
that.
some good feedback.
Good, great, thank you. Moving along, the next item is unfinished business, and the first item, item 6A, is Planning Department Report 2023-139. This will be a public hearing on the letter or R1 rezoning request.
You know, Steve is going to cover this item.
All right, thank you, John. So this, you introduced this at the last meeting. This is a proposal to rezone a piece of property. I'll highlight it just off of South Airport Road. The address is on Eastward Drive. But it's this kind of longer piece right here. The proposal is to, it is currently zoned agricultural. Proposal is to go to R1 single-family residential. The future land use map identifies this as low-density residential, so it matches or corresponds well to the future land use category. And you have some of these other subdivisions kind of in the area, and this is well west of any like commercial area of South Airport. So it seems to fit with the master plan and with what's around it. So tonight's a public hearing for it.
There's also a single-family house already on it.
And there's already a single-family house on it.
Okay, thanks. If any members of the public have any comments, questions, feel free to, again, come forward, please, to the mic and state your name and tell us what you'd like to tell us, or ask us what you'd like to ask us. And it doesn't look like that's why anybody's here, so we'll close that public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Commissioners, thoughts?
I have two questions, a comment and a question. On one of the surveys, it shows this as being split into two parcels. Is this one parcel or two?
It is one parcel according to the county, this layer we got from the county tax parcel. So I think the survey had it at one point was two, so at some point that either must have been combined.
Okay. Because my question is, if it's one parcel, is the proposal to rezone and split? That wouldn't necessarily apply, but then the question is about a curb cut. You know, would they get a curb cut onto South Airport, or would they be doing an easement through the existing parcel to access the new lot?
That's a good question. It's, since we're only looking at the rezoning, there's no like splits proposed, and I think Road Commission would ultimately have to decide if they wanted to allow a curb cut. I don't know if I see them allowing something like that, or if they had to split it in a way that you would have to create like a private road access to it. But applicant hasn't indicated that they wanted to split it at this time.
Part of our packet was the zoning, it shows it split.
Yeah.
And then the parcel is not split. So,
Yeah, there are ways to create access if needed, but yeah, we haven't seen any of that level of detail.
okay.
I would interpret it that they already have the access provided there, so if they did want to subdivide it, they could only go off of Eastward based on our access management standards, which only allow one driveway per parcel. So there would,
Okay.
they've already have established that. Would most likely, if they were to want to put let's say a second home at the rear end of that property, would have to provide some type of an easement and create frontage on that easement for that rear parcel. So I don't know if that could be accomplished or not, but we would not allow for access under this section 425 onto South Airport.
Okay.
And the private road, if they did it, would probably have to come off of Eastward and not South Airport.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I just, I think there was some confusion by the applicant. He made the comment that the property wasn't zoned correctly, and I will quote him, "I'm trying to right a wrong." I think that's a misinterpretation of the facts. Okay, if you understand the history of this lot, it used to be part of the Shaw farm, okay? And it was split off for one of the Shaw kids to build a house onto when South Airport chopped it off. So it was never part of the subdivision So there was never a need to rezone it. It's always been agricultural. It was part of the Shaw Farm.
Right, probably this
So,
whole rectangle was
To
one.
state that we're trying to right a wrong, there was no wrong on the township's part.
Right.
It was always agriculture, and it still is. I understand the want to rezone it,
Yeah.
and I don't have a big issue with it, but I just wanted that to be stated.
Yeah,
That's
and
inaccurate.
and that speaks to also the difference between zoning versus like future land use. Like
Right.
zoning, you retain those rights until you rezone it to something else. But yeah, it's zoning, it does not compel a rezoning, but if you want to do it, you can apply to do it, so.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any comments from the applicant?
I thought the applicant was presented by Steve tonight. Is there somebody here that wants to do a presentation?
Our applicant is in the back. If you'd like to speak to anything, you're certainly welcome to, either before, okay, not this time.
Molly?
Well, just kind of following up on Joe here, that survey is from '06. So at one time, they were split, this survey. So at one time, they were two lots, parcel A and parcel B, and then they must have joined them, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Now, because they, at one time were two, is there a chance that they could be split again?
They would have to meet the minimum lot size and provide access with frontage onto an easement, because you can't have a landlocked parcel. So that's what I was saying, because how it's configured right now, that is the current lot parcel configuration
As one?
as one. And our access management standards, when you create something, in essence, a new development, can only allow for one driveway per parcel. So even if it were to be split, I would interpret it that you would have to come off of eastward and provide an easement going to the rear of the property. That easement would have to be extended to allow for whatever the lot width is requirement for the R1 district, which I think is 100 feet.
I think
Could be
so,
wrong.
yeah, you'd have
Are
to
you
meet.
saying we wouldn't allow an access from airport?
That's how I would interpret this section 425, under the access management.
Because that talks about drives, and it talks about private roads as well.
It's about creating a new parcel. And I don't know if it can meet that requirement for the access as well, the easement.
Okay.
I mean, it has to meet the requirements in the ordinance.
Molly, I would note too, even though there's a survey that seems to show a parcel A and a parcel B, unless there's a deed or something, somebody may have had a survey or draw something up as a, maybe we'll want to do this, but it may have never happened. If the township doesn't have records of a split, then it may not have ever
Maybe, I don't
really
know.
been to
I
us. We
didn't
don't
see
know
if it's
that.
recorded, yeah.
Looked, I think, to all of us when we looked at this previously, that this was pretty straightforward proposal. He just wants the same zoning as all of his neighbors to the west, and everything west of the road seems to be R1, so unless somebody sees some issues with it, it looked to me like a pretty straightforward request that can be granted. Any other thoughts or ideas on this, or does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion to direct staff to draft findings of fact to be reviewed at the January 10th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting for application Z 2023-03, submitted by Dan Lederer to rezone parcel 05 021 004 10 located at 4220 Eastward Drive from the agricultural zoning district to the R1 one-family residential zoning district.
Support.
Is there any further discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So staff will be bringing this back to us at our next meeting in a month, and we'll have some draft findings of fact to look at.
Yep.
Okay? And does Mr. Lederer know what the process is from there, where it goes?
We can, we'll send you a timeline, and we can inform, we'll
Okay,
provide
great.
those details.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Moving along on the agenda to new business, we've got a couple items. Item 7A is Planning Department Report 2023-140, site plan review for the Traverse Symphony Orchestra. Who's going to tee that one up?
Sure, I'll cover this. Yes, we received a application to construct a music school including a large rehearsal room in a portion of the existing Traverse City Curling Center, which is formerly known as Kmart store at Cherryland Center. This is for a portion of the building to the kind of the rear west side of the building. It's roughly about 10,000 square feet and will be accessed from that west side of the building. Professional studios, including music and auditoriums or assembly halls, are uses permitted by right in the CP Plan Shopping Center District. In cases for applications for development within the CP District, they are all required to be reviewed by the Planning Commission in accordance with the site plan standards and development standards in the zoning ordinance. So we reviewed the application, and for the most part, we provide all our information there in terms of meeting the standards. This is, as you recall, in May of 2022, the Planning Commission approved the Curling Center. Curling Center went in and is a portion of that building, but there is available space for additional uses in that particular building. This adds, as mentioned, 10,000 more square feet of use in there, but there is still roughly about half of that building is still available for adaptive reuse on that. I think one of the things that, when we're looking at this site, is the parcel itself, which is kind of, as you can see, is kind of an odd-shaped parcel, including that building plus some of the other space and for parking lots, and what the current parcel map doesn't show, we don't have that cursor, is that new outlot that was created that's currently under construction, where the there's like a 4-unit commercial building that's under construction at that location. But when we look at this, we're looking at the site specifically in terms of how it can be reused for newer uses, no longer looking strictly at commercial uses, as well as the larger Cherryland site. So we're also looking at the kind of the center portion in there, which is the former Yonkers, which is under one ownership, another ownership. The Sears, which you recall last December, approving the electric go-kart facility in there. They're only using a portion of that as well. So that's another situation where we will see new uses come in there as well. So in terms of repurposing these types of structures, they're obviously different types of uses. They're not conventional retail commercial, which is what they were established for. They're very large spaces, and so it's not easy to necessarily repurpose these. But this seems to be going fairly well. I think from what we see here in terms of the curling centers, it's clearly a different type of use here, and that obviously spurred interest in others. And I think this is a good fit for this location, and also kind of alters the orientation of the site from going from and why it was originally built as an enclosed mall. It was converted to a strip mall in the late 90s, and now this, with the new entrance provided at the rear of this building, kind of activates the space in the back, which we know is can be problematic at this time because there isn't a lot of activity. We are want to make sure that there's kind of eyes out in that particular area because it is kind of blocked from view from the street and from the surrounding neighborhoods. So this now activates that space, kind of creates a new opportunity for further redevelopment, not just within the building itself, but the adjoining buildings as well. So one of the things that you may recall when doing the curling center is there was a couple of items that were deferred. One of those was the sidewalk. There's a sidewalk requirement on the portion of Garfield on the frontage, and then there's internal sidewalks to ensure that people have the ability to access into the site itself. Due to the nature of the redevelopment of this, we're recommending that deferral continue, at least from the date of when it was originally deferred on May 11th, 2022, at least 3 years out, because one of our concerns is if you were to put, say, a sidewalk in right now, that things could change. There could be other uses, there could be building expansions or whatever, and we didn't want to tie the applicant down to where they would be restricted and may have to find out, well, now we got a sidewalk that was required to put in and need to remove it or replace it or relocate it in some fashion. Also, while there are those, the way the conditions were written back in 2022, I think they can be extended and restated here this evening. There's also the one related to the landscaping buffer along Garfield, and we feel like that one, even though based on the way it was written, we also feel that can be restated. There is existing landscaping out there right now, so it's never been documented. I don't know that it could possibly already meet our buffer requirements. But it's also one of those things where, as we've seen what's happened at the Wendy's to the south and to the current commercial building under construction, it's a narrow strip there between the right-of-way of Garfield Avenue and some of the frontage of those developments. So when you are putting in those things like landscaping and sidewalk, it's best done simultaneously because that's something where there may need to be some additional land or how it's laid out there could be need to be taken into consideration how that will work. So we're suggesting that also be deferred along with the sidewalk. There's just one kind of very minor item that we identified, and that was the bicycle racks. And they did find a location for those. We were just suggesting that those be located a little bit closer to the building. I realized where they located it was because of a light pole there, but it could be located a little bit in one of the spaces. They do have surplus of spaces closer to the building, and there is one additional rack that's required, but that's kind of an overview of our recommendations.
Is anybody from the applicant going to want to address us, or should we just start talking among ourselves?
I think Kevin Burns was here.
Okay, Kevin, come on forward. If you could state your name for the record. And
My name is Kevin Byrne, 4421 West Timberwood, Traverse City, Michigan. Good evening, everybody. Happy holidays. As representatives of the Traverse City Curling Club, we first approached this commission on our initial plan to redevelop the former Kmart and Cherryland Center on May 11th of 2022. Our first activity was convert roughly 1/3 of the building to the Traverse City Curling Center, which has been completed. Our second activity was to carve out a 1-acre parcel along Garfield for which we had no use. You approved a multi-unit retail plan for that site, and it's currently under construction. Tonight marks the third activity that we're bringing before you since we first came. It's a conceptual new home of the Traverse City Symphony Music School. The TSO, along with their advisors and consultants, has prepared an impressive and comprehensive plan for you to review, a plan we see as being 100% compliant with all township zoning and planning requirements. We are thrilled the TSO has partnered with us in our efforts to redevelop this very important site in Garfield Township. Our success has not occurred in a vacuum. Without the continuous support of this commission, the Board of Trustees, and the people in the planning department, we would not be where we find ourselves today. Since that day in 2022, our portion of the Cherryland Center has seen over $12 million spent on economic redevelopment. When the TSO project is completed, that number will move to $15 million. We're not done yet. We plan to return here soon to bring you another leg of the plan, which we cannot yet publicly comment on. We've made a series of commitments to you and others, and we have done everything we promised to do. We will continue to do so. Jerry Tomzak from Cunningham Limp will make some comments as the general contractor, and Dr. Kedrick Merwin, the executive director of the TSO, will also have some comments. Thank you.
thank you, Kevin.
Steve, I think you have all of this, but
Yeah, we can put it on the screen as well. so.
So good evening, everyone. Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, my name is Jerry Tomzak, and I'm a project manager with Cunningham Limp Construction, 818 Red Drive, Suite 30 in Traverse City. I'm here to also introduce to you quite a few members of the TSO board, Kedrick Merwin, the executive director, and John Dancer, who's also the architect of record for this project. I'll just briefly review with you. You've seen it all in the package. What's highlighted in green is the proposed area that the TSO would occupy. The remaining yellow is the vacant space. Thanks, appreciate it. The light blue color represents the curling center, and the red is that reference that Kevin mentioned earlier about the outlet that's currently being constructed on. There's the next plan that shows just a little larger print of the site plan that includes the improvements that we'll be doing on the backside, which will include new landscaped islands. We're going to improve that sidewalk for that new front entrance there. So the green does depict the TSO area. The yellow is the additional area that future development will happen. This next picture shows the proposed improvements, which is also included in your package. So you can see from the before picture that John and Steve prepared for the site plan review, it's just a split-face block wall. So the improvements include putting in new curtain wall system, new entry. We're going to do some facade improvements that will include like aluminum panels to create a canopy there at the front. And then we'll have some foundation plantings near the building, including the improvements at the sidewalk. We're also going to be improving the site lighting on that backside. And then the last plan just shows a reference of the floor plan area. It includes a music school, the entrance, of course, here on this west side that you'll come into those doors, into a lobby. There'll be practice rooms, offices, conference room, and then the larger area right here, that'll be the rehearsal room. Again, this is strictly for practice. They're not intending to have large gatherings for events that parents would observe and such, and Kedrick could certainly talk more about that. I'll answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name's Kedrick Merwin. I'm the Executive Director of the Traverse Symphony Orchestra, and I'm pleased to be here representing many members of the board, some of our donors and staff this evening. What I would like to say to you is that I think we have an opportunity to take something in this old Kmart and make this a great benefit for our community. We talk about a community music school, and what that means is that we would have classes for parents and babies. We would have classes for 3-year-olds playing Suzuki instruments. We would have our civic orchestras, which we've had in place for more than 20 years. I've been working with TCAPs to develop these programs to make sure that nothing we do steps on anything that TCAP is doing, but supports it. Going up from there, TCAPs asked us if we could provide a youth symphony, which we are happy to do. We have programs for young adults in music theory, music history, and music appreciation. We've just taken over the running of Encore Winds, which has been around since the 70s, an adult semi-professional band. And then we'll be adding programs for seniors that always wanted to play an instrument and never had a chance. So taken together, this community music school will serve the needs of everyone from infants and their parents, through our school-age children in support of TCAPs, through our young adult programs, through our adult programs, and through our seniors, providing a lifetime of cultural enrichment for the entire life cycle of a family. And we're very, very excited to be a part of this project, and thank you for considering it.
Thank you. Commissioners, comments, questions, thoughts?
Looks beautiful.
I think it's pretty straightforward, yeah.
Does, doesn't it? John, just to clarify, in the report, you had suggested maybe continuing the deferral on the internal walks, but maybe not on the Garfield or the landscaping, but apparently with further reflection, now you're thinking, let's defer everything. It's a 3-year deferral that's already a year and a half into its running. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And did we determine that there's probably one more bike rack required?
Yes, based on that, should be one additional bike rack, and like I said, mentioned, I think it would be located closer to the building, would probably be a little bit better and safer for people accessing into the facility.
The one more bike rack it was sort of picked up on, if you look at page 4 of the report, staff kind of lays out what our ordinance requires, two bike racks for every 25 car spaces, and it looks like they got 84 car spaces, so 3 racks doesn't quite do it, but it would take they need space for more than 6 feet bicycles. And with that, unless there's other comments or questions from staff, we've probably got to tweak that draft motion that we've got. Have we got to revise one of those to look at tonight?
Sure, I have some suggested language. So there's the draft recommendation for approval on the bottom of page 6 in the report. I just add on that first one is just to clarify that one additional bicycle rack is required. And then the second condition, I think, is sufficient as is. Basically, the third one would be altered to reflect a similar statement as number 2, but with its focus on the landscaping buffer along Garfield Avenue. And what it would state is, with the establishment of a new use, installation of a landscaping buffer along Garfield Avenue is required. Installation of a landscaping buffer shall be deferred until future uses and buildings are established on the site in a coordinated manner at the discretion of the Planning Commission, and required an amendment to the site plan. Deferral shall be no more than 3 years in length from May 11th, 2022. A landscaping plan shall be developed subject to staff review. So again, same thing as the second deferral, it kind of goes hand in hand, but that one is referred strictly to the landscaping buffer. And then the fourth one is all other agency reviews. As with other development applications, there are other entities such as Metro Fire that review some of these things. In this case, we are asking, similar to what we've done with the curling center and the K1 go-kart facility, is to have the township engineer inspect that, because it probably is, in some cases may need some maintenance, but the parking lot, and if there are any storm sewer structures such as catch basins, just to ensure that they're functioning properly.
Molly?
Well, a question. Is the curling center selling off pieces, or is this a lease? How are we, if pieces are being sold off, we already have these different owners, so how are we dividing up who's going to be doing some of these things in the future? And
Yeah, I think Kevin can speak to that.
The curling center is leasing the space to the TSO. We still will own it.
then we'll have just one owner to deal with. Okay, that's good, thanks.
No problem.
Is everybody okay with staff's current recommendation about deferring the internal sidewalks, the Garfield sidewalk, and the Garfield landscaping?
Yes.
Okay. We need somebody to make a motion, but it sounds like we've changed the verbiage, and nobody's got that in front of them. I'm not sure what the best way to...
Well,
I was going to try to type it real fast, if you don't mind.
Yeah, we have it written
You want to take
out.
5 minutes and take a...
See if we can get it up here. Yeah.
Let's do that. Let's recess for 5
Steve will
minutes.
have
Let
it on the
staff come up with
screen
some language to do that. some revised language that they think would work for a motion. If anybody, well, I guess everybody ought to read that, and if anybody thinks that that's an appropriate motion, I would invite them to make it.
And John, you're suggesting this be read in for the record?
Yes.
Was at the end of number one, where we say one additional bicycle rack is required, meaning a total of 4, right? Maybe we ought to say that?
Sure.
Kevin?
Not trying to throw a stick in the works here. I think it should be submitted by Cunningham Limp on behalf of the Traverse City Curling Club as the owner, Traverse Symphony Orchestra as the tenant. It's our building. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I think.
I'm not sure how the application was read or submitted. Was it submitted on behalf of the curling club?
Is that wrong, John?
I think we're referencing as the applicant and then what is the intended use. So I would prefer that it reference the symphony orchestra.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get into this
The
later.
parcel number is still there for
Yep.
what it is currently, but just so we know, it's more a reference to the use itself. So
Thank
that-
you.
Yep.
What do you think there, team?
All right, I'll give it a go. I'll make a motion to application SRP 2023-12 submitted by Cunningham Limp on behalf of the Traverse Symphony Orchestra to construct a music school on parcel 05-014-049-20 be approved, subject to the following conditions. 1, based on the proposed location of the bicycle racks, a physical barrier is required around the racks in accordance with section 522.c(3) of the zoning ordinance, and locate the racks closer to the building entrance. 1 additional bicycle rack is required for a total of 4 bicycle racks. Condition 2, required internal sidewalks and sidewalk along Garfield Avenue shall be deferred until further uses and buildings are established on the site in a coordinated manner at the discretion of the Planning Commission and required in an amendment to the site plan. Deferral shall be no more than 3 years in length from May 11th, 2022. A sidewalk plan shall be developed subject to staff review. Condition 3, installation of landscaping buffer shall be deferred until further uses and buildings are established on the site in a coordinated manner at the discretion of the Planning Commission and required in an amendment to the site plan. Deferral shall be no more than 3 years in length from May 11, 2022. A landscaping plan shall be developed subject to staff review. Condition 4, all agency reviews, including review by the township engineer, shall be received and deemed compliant prior to issuing the land use permit or building permit.
Support.
Any further questions about the motion? Or any further discussion requested? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations and good luck.
Don't ask me to read that again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. That'll be a nice addition over there. To get that done, that'll be cool. I was just saying, I'd almost like to see put a performance hall.
On the third line, so you'll make sure that
They have a
gets
little room for expansion, so maybe.
They don't have
Put in there
what
what lives on the screen.
I just saved it as PC motion for
Good catch.
TSL. Yeah.
Are they working on that gold?
They get
Oh, we're losing half the crowd.
The curbs are all busted up. That's gonna be nice, because it'll fix that.
Well, I guess now we know what a lot of you are here for tonight. Next item on the agenda, item 7B, is Planning Department Report 2023-138, the Beta Traverse City Housing Commission Transit-Oriented Mixed-Use PUD project, and we're here tonight to discuss a minor amendment. Which of you is going to tee that one up for us?
Covering this, so we received a request from the Housing Commission and their developer, Smith Hensy, to amend the previously approved PUD project, which was approved back in March of last year. And this is the residential portion of that, so it's the area specifically where there's planned residential units, 210 multifamily, 15 single-family, child care center, and a neighborhood commercial building as well. Following that approval back in March of 2022, we did do an administrative amendment. One of the buildings located on the east side had to be shifted approximately 90 feet to, there's a DTE pipeline easement that goes in that area, and there needed to be that adjusted so it wasn't impeding on that easement. So that was something that was done through staff as part of an administrative amendment. More recently, the Housing Commission and Smith Hensy are coming together here to make some adjustments in terms of the building configuration. We kind of anticipated that this was probably going to happen to some degree because we knew the fluid nature of the housing project and its MISHDA funding and so forth may have had to be adjusted. So even though it was approved as 5 buildings, its configuration in terms of number of units we thought was going to change, and now they've provided us with the phased approach, which you have in your packets. There's a phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4. So phase 1 is obviously the one that they're going through initially here and securing funding for, and that's 3 two-story buildings with a total of 48 units. It also includes a clubhouse, so that's a new addition to that, and you can see that on the site plan. There's the mix of different units that are in those buildings, studios, 1-bedrooms, and 2-bedrooms are in the packet there. They're also going to include the playground area for this particular phase 1. The subsequent phases 2, 3, and 4 have different types of buildings. There's a 4-story building in phase 2 with 48 units. Phase 3 has a 1 3-story building with 60 units, and then phase 4 is a 1 4-story building with 54 units. Still 210, so it's no increase in the number of units. It's more or less a reconfiguration, slight adjustment in the location of where the buildings are, but generally the same of what was originally approved. And we reviewed it in accordance with the different parts of the ordinance related to PUDs and amendment processes to the PUDs and the standards, and those are provided in your packet. This is a minor amendment, so it's just a one-time meeting with the Planning Commission. No public hearing is required. It's just a review by the Planning Commission of the site changes that are being proposed.
Is there anybody here from the applicant that's going to want to present to us this evening? You don't have to. I'm just asking if somebody wants to embellish.
Carl Fulmer, Director of Traverse City Housing Commission, 9747 Montague Road, Traverse City. I'd just like to thank everyone for allowing us the opportunity to come forward today. Really, I think the main reason that the plan has been reconfigured a little bit is the addition of a clubhouse, which even for affordable housing or workforce housing, you really should provide some site amenities that you would see market rate apartments provide. And so that additional building on the, what corner is that? The northwest corner is really kind of driving some of the reorganization of the site, as well as John stated, our application rounds with MISHDA to get funding for each phase. So that's really all I wanted to say, and thank you for having us.
Commissioners, what are your thoughts?
Is the single-family home portion just handled totally separately? It's not mentioned in a phase, is that just?
So when we're talking about the phases, we're talking about it in terms of the Housing Commission project.
Okay.
That is like almost a separate element of the whole project.
Okay.
Because that'll be a different owner involved in that.
Gotcha. But it could happen at any time, really. During any of the phases, somebody could start acquiring and building single-family homes, I suspect.
Right. I would defer to them, but I'm assuming that those would be more readily available once the utilities are put in, whether it's the streets and the water, sewer, and so forth.
Well, yeah, the infrastructure would have to be the roads and driveways.
Right.
Okay.
But yeah, it's kind of like a separate parallel project to the site.
All right.
Molly?
So how much of that infrastructure will be completed when phase one is completed?
Yeah, it's kind of identified on there with the orange lines. Yeah, what Steve is,
Goes back to this basin back here. And something there, but it's mostly this 1, 2, 3, 4, the 3 buildings in the clubhouse.
right, along that, kind of in that area there, and then along with this here. We are having, the township engineer is reviewing this just to see the adjustments in the stormwater system and the water sewer system as well, just to make sure that, I don't expect major changes, but just any tweaks, make sure that those are still.
But we're not doing anything on they're not doing anything on, it would be the south half of that as far as roads and all that, or are they doing that all in one?
No, that would be phase 2.
That's shown as the 4-story down here, and all of this is shown as phase 2.
Yeah.
I'm more talking about the infrastructure, just
The infrastructure,
the
yeah.
roads and
Yeah.
parking and all that.
Okay.
That's going to happen as those other phases happen? Yes.
Yes.
So in a project like that that's phased, does the fire department have to look at every phase or the phase plan to make sure that they got the proper amount of turnarounds and stuff like that?
So they are looking, it's a good point, I think they're looking at the entire plan. I think in my sense, so the Metro Fire looks at 2 different things. They look at the plan, the site plan, and then they'll deal with the actual building plans at a subsequent review. So I think it's important now to review everything to make sure it works within their standards, so then the applicant doesn't have to come back. As from my understanding, the requirement that Metro Fire has is on the last building, the Phase 4 building, which is at the very far east side. Because of the height of the building, they want access on both sides. So when I look at that, and I don't know this, I guess it would be up to the engineers, but it seems like that typical type of access is usually like a asphalt strip, kind of like a driveway of sorts. It seems like that could be fit in there along the east side of that building, on the east side. And that, I would think, would suffice to meet the requirements of the Metro Fire. But that's the only outstanding item. I think it's something that can be addressed.
Thanks.
Anybody else with other comments or questions on this one? If not, I think toward the end of the report, staff's got actually 2 proposed motions on this one. One regarding the findings of fact that are part of the report, and if we choose to approve those, then the second motion would be to approve the project, the minor amendment.
If I could just mention that on the conditions that we did mention in there, there's really nothing, we just want to make sure that, there's nothing that it changes the site plans themselves, but we did want to make sure, because of the scope of this project, knowing that it's this housing component along with all the transportation components, We wanted to kind of keep things moving forward, so to create a new baseline. So that's why we've already gone through and identified the different plan sheets that we would like to see in a new recorded RDO. It's really just kind of a record-keeping function. It doesn't really change anything. It alleviates us always having to figure out what is the most current site plan, the most current plans, and so forth. So many of those plan sheets are not changing at this time, and so we wanted to bring those forward along with these ones that are being altered and just record them in a new RDO so we know December 2023 is the new baseline. We don't have to go back to or March of 2022. So just that's kind of what that explanation is there.
I'll try this if you guys don't have anything else to say. That the finding of fact, or I'll make the motion that the finding of facts for application PUD 2020-02-B included in the PD report 2023-138 and forming part of this motion be approved.
Support.
And I'll
Any further discussion on that motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Joey, you want to do another one?
I guess I'll try it. I'll make the motion too that application PUD 2020-02-B submitted by the Traverse City Housing Commission to shift the location, size, and height of the multifamily buildings within the established road network, parking lots, and open spaces and accommodate new architecture, new unit mixes, and a new clubhouse for the Beta TCHC transit-oriented mixed-use PUD on parcel 05-023-042-40 be approved with the following conditions, 1 through 3 of PD Report 2023-138.
Support.
Great job.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on that motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're looking forward to it. Good luck. All right, next up is item 7C, Planning Department Report 2023-137, an introduction on a proposed amendment to Section 725 of our zoning ordinance.
Yes, so this, as you recall, we had a couple of discussions regarding the commercial district housing development section in the ordinance, which is Section 725, and we had an application submitted for a parcel on Garfield Avenue, and as we were going through the reviewing of that process, we identified a couple of items that we thought may need to be altered, that may be problematic to, quite frankly, any development occurring as a commercial district housing development. Those items were discussed by the Planning Commission at previous meeting, and now we're kind of presenting these as a formal introduction to amend this portion of the ordinance. In the report, on page 1 there, the first change is to essentially a couple of things. One is to remove the reference to the parking requirements described in the R3 multifamily district. There are no parking requirements in the R3 multifamily district. And the shared parking agreements as described in 551 of the ordinance, all those are required part of any development. Anything in Article 5, those are all our development standards. Any new development required to adhere to that. So it's not needed to reference that. And then we just clarified the item that said parking areas shall not be located within any setback. We basically removed that. That was the one that was problematic. It's unusual to have that those parking areas restricted in that fashion, most of all of our developments are allowed for parking within setback areas. Setbacks are intended to be for building structures. So the amendment, it basically reads, shared parking arrangements shall be encouraged between the residential and commercial uses. So it's not necessarily a development requirement, it's more of a development principle or design aspect that is being encouraged to be located within these. And certainly makes sense because it's a commercial district housing development and may be in a location where you have residential and commercial uses mixed together. The other one was to provide some clarification. As it currently states, it says open space shall be designed to provide a rear yard along the longest building length of a given structure. A rear yard is already required in terms of setback requirements in every district. We thought it would be more appropriate and provide some ability for the Planning Commission, as it's reviewing specific designs, to adjust that as what they see appropriate. And so there are, previously in section 25, does reference the PURD, the Planned Unit Residential Development Standards, which talks about what would be incorporated in terms of desired design for these types of developments. So we thought that it would be more appropriate to have the text as presented, where it says, for the purpose of locating open space, the Planning Commission may rely on the site design requirements and general criteria as set forth in section 427, Planned Unit Residential Developments. So those standards, those requirements and criteria really kind of apply to the entire site. And knowing that these are sometimes very unique sites allows for the Planning Commission to work with that site design with the applicant and come up with something that really is best suited for that location. There was previous conversation, just as a side note, talking about some things. We had talked previously about density as potential for smaller developments. We thought at this time that that complicates the discussion, and we wanted to be more prudent and go right to those things that are directly impacting at least the one application that we have under review that's been paused. So it's just these two changes that we're suggesting at this time.
Thanks, John. Is everybody clear on that? If any clarifying questions needed, fire away, and if anybody's got any thoughts, comments, whether they like these changes, don't like these changes. What do you think, Joe?
Well, pretty much what we discussed at the last meeting.
I thought so too.
Took the conversation and discussion we had and translated it well into a draft, as far as I'm concerned, so. Well, if there's no discussion, I'll make a motion that draft proposed zoning ordinance text amendment as attached to the Planning Department Report 2023-137 be scheduled for public hearing for the January 10th, 2024 Planning Commission regular meeting.
Support. Is there any further discussion on that motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thank you. I don't see that on the agenda, but it was in our packet.
Oh, it's, yeah, it's number 9 under other, 9A.
Oh, it is, okay. Well, before we get there, we have our last chance for the public to give us comment if they would like. So if there is any public comment, please come forward, state your name, and tell us what you want to tell us.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Ben Smith. My address is 5217 Greenstone Lane in Traverse City. I'm here this evening to speak in regards to feedback to the draft master plan that was referenced earlier this evening, and specifically for the future land use map as currently drawn, as referenced behind you, as well to compare it to what is in the draft master plan for future. Specifically, I'm drawing your attention to the change from more of an agricultural approach to the area in which I live in the township, which is the northwest corner, and change from agricultural to residential, as the primary focus point, so essentially a stark green to yellow change, and would ask that you review that as a part of reviewing whether that makes sense and would be more appropriate to maybe a mixed approach and be in line with your recent community survey. I know one of the questions there was in regards to the outer edges of Garfield should stay mostly residential and agricultural in character, and I believe that was in the 92% combined of agreed and strongly agreed. So to me, I would say that would be our primary feedback is to, specific to our two parcels that we have in the township, be focused as a future land use and agricultural, but certainly take into account that region as well that is currently in active farming as well as residential areas and their logical assignments. I'll take any questions, but that's my primary feedback.
Mr. Smith, could you tell us where your property is located? Is it in what the future land use map shows in yellow or in green right now?
Right now, it shows it as in green, as I understand, but that is not the current zoning, as I understand as well.
Yeah, so what you're showing, if you're looking in the draft master plan, it's going to look as yellow right now.
Okay.
First of all, let me just, Steve's got, maybe Steve, if you shut off the zoning.
Okay. Yeah, this,
And just so get some-
zoning, here's the area we're at. This
Yeah.
is Harris, Cedar Run, and Barney.
That is correct.
Main roads around here.
Okay.
So one of the, and the Smith's properties are right there. You know, one of the things that when we were looking at this northwest part of the township, there's, the township established, there's the water tower there, actually you can see at that location. And then there's also, the most recent was the water main that was extended along Cedar Run. So that was kind of the rationale, is to maybe think about altering the designation as its current is, as you see on the future land use map, is the agricultural/rural land. Basically, that allows residential and agricultural operations. It has a minimum is what it's looking for, is for most of the zoning out in that area is a 1 acre minimum. Now, there's some areas up in that area that are zoned R1, which is basically 3 units to an acre. So we were just kind of thinking that maybe this could just be the low-density residential, and again, this is looking further out, knowing that there's now that water main going along Cedar Run, that this could allow for, new residential development. It wouldn't prevent anybody from, doing or continuing agricultural operations. So I think at this point, we might, maybe look at maybe paring that back, and maybe Cedar Run is that boundary. Cedar Run runs just to the north of the high school and kind of the Lone Tree developments to the south there, and maybe that might be the better designation for now, and so we can kind of pare it back and kind of go in that route.
Okay. Well, I suspect we're going to get lots of feedback, and yours is one of the first, so thanks for coming and giving us an early view.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Anybody else got anything they want to ask us or tell us tonight? If not, we're going to close the public hearing. All right, or public comment, I should say. We'll move along then to item 9, other business, and the first item is item 9A. We need to set a planning commission meeting schedule for next year, and staff has put one in the packet that I think looks pretty much like they've been looking for years. And I don't know what people think about that. I see a joint meeting with the town board. I think we've tried to do one of those each year. But eventually, this evening, I guess we should probably make a motion to either adopt this or adopt something other than this, but we ought to adopt something.
I'll make the motion to accept the planning commission meeting dates as listed.
Support?
Everybody okay with that? All in favor, then signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So what you've got, item 9A, that will be our schedule. Thank you. Next up is item 9B, Planning Department Report 2023-141, Master Plan Update, and we've been given a review of or been given a complete draft to review, I should say. John, you want to take it away from here?
Yeah, I'm going to have Steve kind of cover this.
Thank you, John. So yes, at the last meeting, we put on your desks we're calling it a complete draft. It's, I would say, kind of a complete rough draft, kind of first go at it. Even when we've reviewed it since then, we're like, oh, we need to tweak a few things on this or add a few things. We wanted to get it in front of the Planning Commission to get your feedback as well. We also put it out, as we said earlier, via the newsletter and put it on the website. So thank you also everyone who read the newsletter and took a look at the master plan. This is exactly what we want to see is feedback from our residents because it's ultimately going to be their plan. It's their community. So the other thing we wanted to put on here is sort of a draft timeline of kind of the remaining part of the process. So this entire 2023, we've kind of been doing this in reviewing this in chunks. And the draft master plan was basically putting all of those pieces together. Everything from the existing conditions and community engagement reports to kind of goals and objectives on different topics to future land use map to zoning plan to implementation. This at least puts it all together. So this is sort of the first review of that. In January, we have a study session again, since we have no more holiday conflicts. So we can continue reviewing that. We wanted to put forth as a draft timeline kind of doing a very complete, thorough review at that study session. And in February, kind of have the most final draft to recommend or to forward to the township board so that when we have the joint meeting, that would be both boards reviewing the final draft that would go into the official adoption period. And there'd be a required review period by state law at 63 days, and it also goes to neighboring communities. Like we've reviewed Long Lakes Township in the past couple months. We've reviewed East Bays in the past. We would send ours to them as well and get some feedback at that time. But this is really the first go at the full draft. So if anyone had a chance to read sections of this or have any comments, or we can discuss kind of however much we want.
Are there timelines contemplated when we're going to have hopefully plenty of folks like Mr. Smith here tonight from the public that'll be asking questions or telling us what they think at any of those dates or some other dates?
All of them are public meetings. We didn't have a specific pop-up style like we did earlier this year, but the newsletter links to that website so we can post kind of the timeline or how we can gather feedback, like if you would like to provide any. A handful of people have also emailed us some comments as well, and so we want to gather those and bring those back to Planning Commission as well as you receive those. John, I don't know if you have anything to add?
We're also required by state law to hold another public hearing.
Yeah, I was wondering if it would be on one of those dates or
Yeah,
something.
it would be, public hearing would be in there.
I think we could also have it, how our thought process is here is once the board has kind of had the chance to say this is acceptable at the March 27th meeting, kind of that would be the point where it kind of really opens it up. And I think there would be some other opportunities. I mean, at a minimum, you have to have one public hearing. Doesn't mean we can't have more or other public opportunities to comment on it. So I think it would probably be something that we'd like to do and give people that opportunity. And certainly, as Steve mentioned, having it out there already has been really helpful. It kind of helps us to kind of get it out when it's a bit raw like this, because then we can make the changes. It's kind of at that point when hits kind of the town board is like ready to kind of go through that 63-day process, at that point, you kind of really want it pretty much polished in its form, and you don't want to have to make, I mean, you can still make changes, but you don't want to make major changes. If there are major changes to be made, now is the time to do it. And so we do appreciate people reviewing it and giving us feedback right now, too, so.
Are you envisioning there'd be another public hearing then sometime between March 27th and June 11th?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Commissioners, I don't know if anybody wants to get into the weeds or just give overview, general comments or no comments about any of this stuff.
And I would just add too, we can do some public meetings where aren't necessarily this formal. We can do more presentation style for the public so that they can be more discussion oriented. This is kind of always, the planning commission's meetings are very good for effectively doing development reviews, et cetera. I think if we have opportunity to do something with the public, it can be more of a informal, we can maybe do a presentation and then have more conversation as opposed to the formal meeting process. And that could be done maybe before a regular meeting. Sure.
Well, again, anybody got anything they want staff thinking about before we have another study session on this in a month?
Are you considering, the next time of changing that north of Cedar Run, like you indicated during the public comment, that?
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of I mean, what do you?
I guess I don't know if you want to talk about it, you're gonna come back and,
Well, we can, I guess that's up to you guys right now, how much you want to get into this right now.
I don't know if you want to, that's why I was gonna ask, if you
Oh.
want to get into that now, or are you just gonna maybe change your?
I think we should, if we're gonna make some changes, I think maybe we might need to do a little bit more investigation and seeing what would make sense. I was thinking of Cedar Run only because we already have some existing development to the south of there, between there and the high school as potential, and because of the way we have water line going down Cedar Run, but we also have a sewer line basically going up there to Brookside Commons at that, where that cul-de-sac of Zimmerman is a sewer line right there. So that, and Lone Tree is all sewered as well. So when you have that combination of both water and sewer and knowing some of the topography in there, it kind of makes that area directly north of there possible for residential development. So, but,
Well, I know when we talked a lot about that corner of the township, and you know, a lot of our thoughts also took in what Long Lake's doing on the other side of Harris Road. They've got high-density residential, they've got potentially commercial on that corner. So regardless of what we do, you know, the development's happening up Gray Road on the Long Lake side. So as we're trying to mirror and be consistent and transitional, we really talked about it being more transitional. They're high density, we'd be low density, and then as we work toward the city. So it wasn't that we didn't put a lot of thought into that quadrant of the township, we did. So I don't want to just throw the baby out with the bathwater without talking about it more. Because I don't think we just haphazardly said, hey, we're gonna, you know, what's happening up there is happening up there. So we just want to make our master plan consistent with what's, you know, it's a breathing document. It's not what happened in the past. What the master plan said in 1980 and 1990 and 2000, you know, they're breathing and changing documents. So I think it deserves some discussion before we just say, hey, let's change that.
yeah. We can take a little look at it and maybe come up with some options for you for the January study session, and give some more thought to it. You know, I think it's important to understand that it's not an all, you know, agriculture or all residential type of thing. The planning, the master plan can provide some direction, particularly in areas like this that might require some flexibility and interpretation based on whatever development proposal or project that somebody's trying to do. by law, the master plan is required to have a zoning plan in there, which gives you direction, so, on zoning changes. And so, just because it might be designated for, let's say, agriculture or low-density residential, doesn't mean you can't rezone it to zone it agriculture or the R1. As Steve's just pulled up there at the bottom, the designation is over on the left side. It calls it low-density residential, which is 1 to 3 units per acre. The current zoning is recommended as the R1, one-family residential, but then it gives some potentially compatible districts. So we have 3 districts identified in that, and they're kind of a range in density. You have the rural residential and the A agriculture are really those larger lots. And then you also have potentially even some R2 in there, which is really kind of our duplex, two-family type of. So it's stating that by maybe R1 is the one that's most commonly attached to the low density. There's the flexibility of applying those other districts in that area as well. So it's really gives the opportunity for the township, as applicants come forward with their projects, to kind of figure out what might fit, might be suitable in that area.
And in that case, it's part of the master plan that, just being a different section in the future land use map, like often when we're looking at rezonings, there's those set of factors, and the first one is the consistency with the master plan, which often means the future land use map, but there really is like consistency with all parts of the master plan. So if there's other language that deserves to be considered, this is certainly one of those. And in this case, our current master plan has similar language to this. And I think we've used that before in the zoning, language from the zoning plan when we're reviewing these. Because some of them have been, they could kind of go either way, but it's like, what are like the sum total of all the factors? So this is a key part of it.
And I just, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, Molly was going to mention something.
Just even if it's zoned agricultural, it doesn't mean it's going to be farmland. A developer could come in and they could present a project to us that if it's 40-acre parcel, say they want to put in 38 lots or whatever, they don't have to have it on 1 acre. They can do cluster development, some other way of doing it. And with all the infrastructure that's there, I think that people should expect that that's probably the way it's going to go. We've got water and sewer. We've got those things there. We may not need to go to any higher density, but it's not likely to remain, certainly not cherry trees or some other agricultural use.
Yeah, the really kind of the ag designation is really more ag/rural residential. It's basically our 1 lot or excuse me, 1 acre or greater type of. But you're right, you could do some. We have options in there. Potentially, they could do even like a PURD in there, or which would have mixed residential in there. So there are options to that, and the plan is just to anticipate what we see most likely. It is an area that does have some challenges in terms of the land. There's a lot of land there and available for different projects and development and so forth. But one of the challenges I see in that area is its relationship kind of to the larger urban area. Some of the road systems in there kind of are going, would anticipate could be congested based on additional development in that area. But that's something that's going to have to be considered as this area kind of grows into the future. And again, the plan is supposed to be looking, 20 years out. So we're not necessarily expecting it to be transferred to development anytime soon. It's just to give what options might be available for people to go out looking 20, 30 years out.
So if you're looking 20, 30 years out, and we've never really established a residential ring, you know, I think it'll be determined by the infrastructure that we put in, the water and sewer. So,
Well, this is good. We're probably going to get lots of other comments. At least we hope we get other comments. That'll be food for thought, and we may very well agree with the comments. If we don't, hopefully they'll at least provide some stimulation and some discussion, and we'll have rationales for why we do or why we don't.
Let's just make sure if we're going to be discussing it at study sessions, let's make sure we publish that, we publicize that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
the opportunity, there's going to be several more opportunities to give
Yeah.
input into the master plan. Let's just make sure our agendas and our, especially the study sessions, because that's what we'll be doing those.
Absolutely.
We make it known that's what we're going to be discussing. And there's two of them before we have the joint meeting, so those will probably be pretty key meetings for our
Absolutely.
discussion.
Yep. Definitely want to get the word out.
I guess just for what it's worth, I wanted to make a comment, sort of a big picture comment. I really like the way this looks. I think it is logical and it's well thought out and it's well laid out and it explains a lot of stuff. And it looks to me like one or two persons, like you guys probably, wrote it all, which is nice. It doesn't look like it was written by a committee. Except I got one exception to where my perception of that, and that's talking about the Hartman-Hammond Bridge connection on pages 41 to 43 on the master plan. That looked to me more like an infomercial to try to sell the Hartman-Hammond connection, and it may very well be that it ought to be built, but it struck me that in the appendix, we've already talked about what the road commission and some of those meetings have come up with, and there's all kinds of factual data about the PEL report and its recommendations. So that's in the report, it's in the appendix. And if the road gets built, then I think, like it starts to be talked about in here, what sort of guiding principles do we need? And regulating uses and restricting access and all those other things. It just struck me, though, as I say, most of pages 42 and 43 look like an infomercial trying to sell it. And I guess I don't personally think anything in the rest of the plan looks like a sales job. It's more, it's factual, this is what it is on the ground, this is our goal, this is what we're trying to do. And it just seems to me that's sort of been a lightning rod for 40 years. And we got 20,000 residents, and some are in favor and some are not. But if it gets built, I think we ought to regulate it, as we've talked about in here. But I don't know that I personally have a doubt about whether we ought to be making it look like we're pushing it. But I may very well be a minority view on that, but that was just my overall comment to the whole thing. It looked like that stood out as different treatment than everything else that was in the document. But
well, the town board has come out with a very strong statement that they're in favor of that.
I know.
So, you know, there is that. Personal opinion, the money is getting up there pretty high and very difficult to do.
I think so, too.
So I think probably what we're going to be looking at are different road alternatives. So other connectors. We'll see. Then I heard a figure of 90 million out of Grand Traverse County. That's our part of it. I don't know that that's
Yeah, I have a hard time believing the
real
money's
in
going to be
20
there, too.
years.
But-
know.
But whether it is or isn't built isn't really up for us to decide, and I do know the town board would like to see it built. I'm just, as I said, I don't know that we should be salesmen in our plan and explaining to everybody why this is a great idea, when there may be a certain percentage of people that don't think it's a good idea, and they may not appreciate seeing that language in our plan. But I also don't think we should stick our head under a rock and pretend there's no talk about this. There's a ton of talk about it. But as I say, I think the topic ought to be there. I'm just not so sure that we ought to adopt as part of our plan all the PEL findings and the political pluses and minuses that go along with all of that. But
Yeah, I think, I'll be honest with you, I think when I was probably one of the main authors in this portion of it, and I think it was kind of taken off from some of the resolution that the board had passed recently in support, so it was probably carrying on that same type of tone, and I would agree. I think what our mindset has been, and I know the planning commission has, when it's looked at the Hammond corridor, is to make sure that the flow of traffic goes through there, particularly with the recent improvements done by the road commission for that, and ensuring that there's a limited number of new driveways along there, and so that's that line has been held by the township very well. And also the types of uses really have an impact on that corridor as well. So we have only some local commercial there where the two gas stations are. There are other types of uses in there, but they're not going to be retail, commercial, or those uses that tend to draw people in, say, to similar, or to an area like where the Crossings is or the Grand Traverse Mall is at, where you have, that's a regional attraction. So it affords that area, ensuring that traffic flowing through there is relatively smooth. So I think that type of approach is something that, should this crossing be established, that now continues that corridor all the way over to 31, and we want to kind of continue that approach as well as maybe also looking at that area along, let's say, if it were to connect or repurpose Hartman over there to 31 as maybe an opportunity to have even more limited access, but maybe also some areas that are maybe kind of could be constructed more of a more like a parkway type of atmosphere there, that even eliminates some more types of opportunities, so that there's not a lot of concentrated development. Mainly because this does afford not just the opportunity for Garfield Township in getting a connection in a community that's really physically divided by the river, but also its impact on the region. And I think that's the one thing we are also being mindful of, that the Grand Traverse County and the larger region flow through this area quite a bit, whether it's commerce or people just traveling. And so just to be mindful of that. And we just wanted to make sure that it's our feeling that that approach is going to be carried forward, and just so maybe it's reflective in the master plan. But I would agree, I think maybe in other documents and, resolutions and maybe other locations might be more appropriate to maybe have some of those types of comments. So I think we can maybe, for the purpose of the master plan, still support it and provide some direction and desire by the community as large, but maybe done in maybe a more appropriate tone for a master plan.
And I'm thinking too, when we have more public hearings, there's probably going to be lots more folks like Mr. Smith that are going to point out this place, and let's talk about this and that. The other thing, if this is in here as it is now, hook, line, and sinker, we're going to have a room full of people that are going to want to debate that. And I don't think this is the time or place to do that. But again, that's just my thinking, but enough said from me on that. But
That's good.
Anything else anybody wants to suggest to staff before we probably put a wrap on things?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
We're not quite there yet, I don't think. We got items for the next agenda yet? So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we better, if you wouldn't mind holding off on that motion.
Be
for just a
happy
minute.
to.
Okay. So does anybody else have anything more they want to tell staff, first of all, about the master plan tonight? Okay.
If you get comments for us, could be, if there's big picture things and you want to bring them to the study session, I think that'd be appropriate. If there's other, just if you're reading for grammar or format or tone or things like that and want to send us some comments too, we can take those in, even just like over email.
We'll just email you some notes as we
Yeah,
go
if you have
through.
notes like that, that would be perfect.
I thought you had paid Miss Danford to take care of all the grammar.
We should actually acknowledge, yes, Judith Danford. Thank you so much for reading through several sections of that plan for grammar and tone as well. So.
If you have anything else, let me know.
We can use all the review we can get from you. Thank you.
So,
All right, we'll move along then. Items for next agenda. What do we have for our next agenda?
we just set a public hearing for the
Zoning ordinance.
zoning ordinance. We've got findings for letter rezoning. We did get one application in for Culver Meadows
Culver
from Brad
Meadows.
Jewett.
For conditional rezoning?
May be ready for review.
Yes, that would be for an introduction.
Intro, yeah. I think that's all we have. No other new applications or anything. These two things were just one meetings today, so.
Okay. Anybody got any questions or requests or suggestions for next agenda? Are we ready for Bob's motion?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Oh, that's right. For the items of next agenda, we'd always do our election of officers, right?
Oh, there should also be election of
Yes,
officers.
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Thank you for the reminder.
January, yep.
Okay.
Bob, did you move we adjourn?
I did.
We are adjourned.